This conversation was recorded in 2013.
Now, for over 30 years, one of the most important traditions in our family is when we get up in the morning, Dr. Zahara reviews her dreams. Now, there are so many theories on the meaning and importance of dreams that, well, I guess we've reviewed over 15 or 20 books in the past 26 years on it on 21st Century Radio that I thought that I had nearly exhausted our desire to review another book on dreams. And once again, I was wrong. Yes, indeed. I was a bit short-sighted, and I shouldn't have been, because we're always learning new tricks for us old dogs. Now, tonight's first 1.5 hours, we will be joined by Robert Moss and his latest work, Dreaming the Soul Back Home, Shamanic Dreaming for Healing and Becoming Whole. Now, here's what my doctoral committee chairman, Dr. Stanley Krippner, had to say about dreaming the soul back home. Shamanism is the original psychotherapy, and shamans were the first psychotherapists, counselors, and physicians. In this book, Robert Moss teaches his readers how to become shamans of their souls, as well as how to help others heal their lives. Shamans were the first dream workers, and Moss provides his readers with enjoyable activities through which they can turn to their dreams for inspiration. Of special value is his description of soul loss and how shamans helped people retrieve errant parts of themselves, becoming whole again without the aid of electroshock therapy, dangerous medications, or superficial therapeutic band-aids. If you would like to work with your own dreams and can read only one book this year, you can do no better than Dreaming the Soul Back Home. Stanley Krippner, Ph.D., co-editor of Perchance to Dream, yes, indeed, and professor of psychology and humanistic studies at Saybrook University. And it was Dr. Stanley Krippner who championed Dr. Queen Zahara's DHL, awarded to her from my alma mater, Saybrook University, and that's a great honor indeed for her because of Dr. Zahara's founding of one of the first and largest holistic healthcare facilities in America at Ruscombe Mansion. Now, Robert Moss is the creator of Active Dreaming, an original synthesis of modern dream work and shamanism that he teaches all over the world. His 9 books on dreaming, shamanism, and imagination include Conscious Dreaming, The 3 Only Things, The Secret History of Dreaming, Dream Gates, and Active Dreaming. He lives in upstate New York. Welcome to 21st Century Radio, Robert.
So good to be with you, Bob.
And congratulations on this magnificent contribution to our planet. Great job.
You're a gentleman of impeccable taste and judgment, sir.
Well, of course. Well, so are you, of course. Oh, my. Now, before we get into everything, I have to ask this most important question. That is, what's the difference between the soul and spirit, Robert?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? These are slippery words. I mean, they're slippery in our usage, they're slippery in scripture, they're slippery in literature. I use the word soul in this book and in my practice to mean, one of two things. Something that is part of our vital energy, which is vital but can be lost. We can lose parts of it. We can lose parts of our vital energy. We suffer pain, we suffer abuse, we suffer grief. Part of us can go away. And I use it in a broader sense as a whole sort of horizon of spiritual depth to our lives. And I use the word spirit in a couple of slippery ways too. I use it for a part of our souls that cannot be lost because it's part of our spiritual identity on a higher plane, part of our connection to the divine, part of our connection to the source, which in a sense can never be lost, but we can lose our access to it by the way we live, by the choices we make. We can cut ourselves off from that spiritual depth. But I also use the word spirit, plural, to mean, spirits of the dead, spirits of the departed, spirits that come and go. So I admit that in my usage of these words, I'm a bit slippery, but then the words themselves are very slippery in the English language.
Yeah, well, they certainly are. Now, tell us about soul loss. What is it, and what are some of the symptoms of
Well,
it?
this in English is a description of one of the shamans' primary diagnoses of what is wrong with us, what goes wrong in life, the explanation for a lot of our illness, depression, lack of energy, confusion, misfortune. The idea is that we suffer the loss of soul in the sense of vital energy, and to a certain extent also of basic identity. We lose parts of ourselves when we suffer pain, abuse, grief, when we go through wrenching things in life, which make us feel, that the world is too cruel, that we don't want to be around. So part of us goes away. It's a bit of a survival technique. We can all understand this when we think about that childhood self, that teen self, that younger self, who was shamed, abused, lonely, sick, isolated, who found that, life was so tough, he or she really didn't want to be in this body, in this world, and may have even have wished himself or herself dead. Many of us have been through that.
Hmm.
We may have succeeded in a sense of exiling a part of ourselves from the body, from the world, somewhere else, even to a region of the dead. We may have done that. We may have sent part of ourselves away because the world was too cruel. And this is actually, in the shaman's analysis of what goes wrong with us, the root cause of many things, that we suffer. And the shaman's approach to healing is to find a way to bring that part of vital energy, that child self, that baby self, that beautiful romantic teen self, back into the body where it belongs. And that's what this book is all about.
What are some of the symptoms of it?
Well, lack of energy is one of them. I mean, the tendency to stuff yourself full of something or other in order to try and fill a hole that's inside you, I mean, eating disorders, addictions, alcoholism, obsessive behaviors, ways of trying to fill a basic gap in yourself that is there because you are not fully present to yourself. These are some of the symptoms of soul loss. And one of the primary symptoms in our lives and in our world, actually, is the absence of a relationship with dreams. It's interesting, because I teach people how to dream, as you mentioned. I teach people many exciting and innovative ways to work with their dreams. But in fact, in our lives, the existence of a prolonged dream drought, where you have no relationship with your dream life, is one of the primary symptoms of soul loss. It means that you have lost connection with the dreamer in you. I mean, that beautiful, bright dreamer you once were has gone away because something happened that sent him or her out of your body and out of your world. So it's ironic that I write a book called Dreaming the Soul Back Home. One of the primary symptoms of soul loss is the lack of relationship with your dreams. The Iroquois Indians, the Six Nations of the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee, who you've written about in your own work, they say traditionally that if you are lacking a relationship with your dreams, it's because you've lost a part of your soul, and I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Wow. Well, they were some brilliant souls, that's for sure. Still are. Now, what is the difference in a practical sense between someone with a lot of soul in their bodies and someone who doesn't? Is it just an energy thing?
Well, we feel it in terms of energy, don't we? We feel when people are more present and more missing, and we know that in ourselves. I mean, on the average day, we notice we have fluctuations in our own lives and the level of our own energy and the sense of our presence to ourselves. I mean, there are days when all of us are a few sandwiches short of a picnic, but we're not all present. We wonder where the rest of us might be. I mean, that can be a transitional thing. There are days when we're up and when we're on and when we're not. But, the basic energy level is part of it. I mean, somebody who is down all the time and therefore tends to suck and drain energy from others is probably a good candidate for the diagnosis of soul loss. But basically, Bob, I have never met a human being who has not suffered soul loss to a greater or lesser extent. I think it's part of our condition. And waking up to the fact that we may not be fully present, but may have ways of getting more of ourselves into the body, into life, into the play of life. I mean, I think that is the access to healing that is available to all of us.
Well, obviously I agree. I'm kind of, but I'm all biased. I'm prejudiced in this area. But I hate to say this, but and I don't want you to be bored by hearing it, but this is one of the most important books I've ever read in my life.
Well, I'm not bored by that at all. That's a remarkable endorsement from you, and I thank you for it.
Well,
I think it's important because this is terribly simple and basic human stuff. I mean, it goes to the root of what all of us live and try to deal with. And the methods offered in the book are things that actually people can do for themselves with the proviso, with the condition that probably you need some people to help you, but in a friendly sense, in a human sense, in the sense of having somebody or a small group of friends who will support you in your efforts. This is not something where you have to go to the great shaman, the great guru to do everything for you. The book lays out how you can learn to follow a way of getting more of yourself together and becoming the shaman of your own self and the healer of your own soul. And in that sense, this is truly for everybody.
And also, you provide so many excellent examples on so many different levels. I mean, this is a multi-level book.
Yeah,
and
well,
you talk about
I like to read a lot as you do. I like to study different traditions. I like to bring it together. And like you, I think, Bob, I like to help people understand that the story we are living now, the drama we are living now, is one of many dramas, many stories being lived in many dimensions, many times, all at once. And as we wake up to that and can begin to draw upon, in a conscious and activist way, draw on our connections with other times and other selves and other dimensions, we do better.
Mm-hmm. Well, why does the soul have a hard time staying in the body?
Well, the world is not necessarily kind. We have challenges. I remember a beautiful young woman came to one of my workshops several years ago, and she said, "Oh, the soul is something that always wants to leave," she said, and I resonated with her. I could understand the depth of pain that came from her, and I suddenly remembered things in my own life. I mean, I had a very challenging childhood. I died and came back a few times. We call that the near-death experience these days. I mean, in those days, straight-in doctors would say, "Oh, poor kid, he died and he came back, didn't he?"
Yeah.
So I had a hard time staying in my body as a kid. I was sick. I was lonely. And then I remembered when I was 19 years old and lost the first girl I ever loved. It was terribly hard for me to want to stay in the body in this world. We suffer pain, we suffer grief, we suffer abuse, we suffer loss. Things go against us. We don't want to be around. And part of us, which shamans call soul, wants to go away. I mean, it's part of our human condition. And learning to hold ourselves together through all of that is part of our healing and our power.
So when the soul goes away, where does it go? Where does it leave?
It's a very good question. And there are locales in non-ordinary reality, and I think you're quite familiar with this idea. There are locales in non-ordinary reality where these things can be found. But let's start on a very practical and human and everyday level. I mean, when people dream, and they do dream of this, when people dream of being back in the childhood place, back in grandma's house, or back in the place you used to share with your former wife or husband or lover or boyfriend or whatever, when you dream of being back in the old place, those dreams can be about lots of things, maybe about unfinished business, maybe about analogies between what happened then and what's happening now or what is going to happen now in your life. But sometimes those dreams in which you're back in your old life, maybe in your childhood life, in that childhood place, sometimes they're saying to you, wait a minute, did you leave part of yourself back in that time in your life and maybe back in some version of that reality? Is there part of you that in a sense is still hiding in the closet in your childhood room, or still hanging out at grandma's, or still living in the place that you shared with your former partner? Those are interesting questions. What I have found is that when people learn to explore dreams like that, not just by analyzing them, but by learning to reach back into the place of those dreams, to go back in a sense into the place you're in that dream, that earlier place, you can sometimes access and have contact with a part of yourself that went missing and is to be located and found there now and can be brought back from that place. But there are other places where these lost aspects of ourselves, these soul parts, if you like, go to. There are places like the land of the lost boys in Peter Pan. Most people remember that. Yeah. The lost boys in Peter Pan are living in a place where they're safe and they have adventures. They never have to grow up, and that's where they want to be. Sometimes our lost children, our lost boys and girls who went away because life was so painful and they were shamed and abused and not supported, they go to places like that. I've written stories about this in that book and in my other books, and I've had success in helping people to go to those places too, to go to the locations, the lands of the lost boys and lost girls, where part of themselves that did not want to be around in childhood because life was so tough, found refuge and lived for a while, maybe for 30 years or more, but from which they can be persuaded to come home and make the life of the person today more full, more rich, more imaginative when they come. So these are some of the places that we go when we travel as lost parts of a person to another reality.
Well, we need to go somewhere else just about now.
Okay.
For just
hear
a few minutes here. And friends, this book is an adventure. I'm telling you, you will love it, because as my wife grabbed it from me when I first got my hands on it, she said, "Look how well this guy writes." And I said, "But look what he's saying." I mean, you really do teach, and you teach well. You're obviously a very dedicated soul to this. So, boy, what an honor to have you on the show. But right now, we need to take a break here, friends. And we're talking with Robert Moss, Dreaming the Soul Back Home. Shamanic Dreaming for Healing and Becoming Whole. New World Library. Go to mossdreams.com.
Hello, this is Stanley Krippner. I'm professor of psychology at Saybrook Graduate School in San Francisco on behalf of 21st Century Radio, run by Dr. Bob Hieronimus. And I would certainly encourage listeners to stay tuned, because you will hear things on 21st Century Radio that you'll hear nowhere else on the airwaves.
mossdreams.com. I noted that you've had many publishers, but you have done 4 or 5 books with New World Library in a very short period of time. Am I correct?
Yes, I'm in danger of becoming a constant author, Bob, in the sense of staying with one publisher for a long time. I love New World Library. I love my editor, Georgia Hughes. I tell the story in the first book I wrote for them of how I came to publish with New World Library. If you like, I'll tell it to you. It's a story about synchronicity and the significance of slips in life. Would you like to hear that?
I'd love to hear that. I just wish we had 6 hours tonight. Go ahead. No, I do.
I have a little radio show of my own, and I just done a radio show in which I coined the phrase "the 3 only things." I was referring to dreams, coincidence, and imagination. The things that we tend to dismiss by saying it's only a dream, it's only a coincidence, it's just my imagination. But in fact, these are very important sources and resources for us in life. And I thought, well, that's a good idea for a book, a simple book, dreams, coincidence, imagination. Who will I offer it to? I mean, I'd been with a number of publishers. I'm thinking of calling someone in New York. I suddenly remember I've had this great series of emails with the editorial director of New World Library, Georgia, and on behalf of other people's books, she wanted quotes for them. I advocated someone's book. I give her a call. So I pick up the phone, I call her, and she answers her own line, which is, not necessarily ordinary. She talks to me like a friend she's known for years and years, as if we've been on vacation together. And I say, "Georgia, do you know who this is?" She says, "Yes, absolutely. You're Robert Moss. You're the author we are publishing." I say, "My dear, I'm calling you to talk about a book. We've never discussed a book before." "Oh," she says, "I'm so sorry. I was confusing you with our author, Richard Moss." I say, no, don't apologize. There are different slips in life. There are Freudian slips. There are opportunistic slips. There are cosmic slips. You just told me you know absolutely who I am. I'm Robert Moss. I'm the author you are publishing. And half an hour later, we had, fleshed out the theme of the book. A day later, we'd agreed on the terms, and she became my publisher. All because, in a sense, of a slip. So one of my rules, Bob, for living by coincidence, which is the dreamer's way of living 24/7, is this. Notice what is showing through the slip. It was a slip. Yeah. It was a slip on the phone that put us on the track of a really wonderful publishing relationship. So I've actually contracted to deliver my 6th book with this house later this year. It's a book about really a bit of a memoir. It's a book about my own experiences of dying and coming back as a kid and what flowed from that.
Well, you need to join us to talk about that in the future, if you don't mind. I mean,
I
really.
could be persuaded. You're such a
we'll send you $20,000, and I'll do it. That'll help out.
It's actually not about money, but it's
about
the pleasure and the fun of doing it, as you know well. So I'll certainly do it for the fun of doing it.
Okay, now there are so many great questions that I have in front of me. And when I started reading your book, I just could not put it down. I think you've heard this a million times in the past. But if I showed you, I'm going to hold this up to the microphone now. If I showed you what my book looks like now, can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
It's every page. Every page is written all over. And my wife always complains about this because she says she can't read my books. Well, that's why I gave her a copy of your book so she can read it. But this book now becomes a document. It is a reference book that I can carry with me because I can find you wherever I need to find you.
Yeah, and I like your way of reading. I cannot read happily without interacting with the book, so I'm always reading with a pencil in hand. I avoid yellow highlighter and so on, but when I'm reading a book, even a novel, I have a pencil nearby. I like to interact with the book, write notes, jot. I mean, then you're having a real encounter with the book, aren't you?
I've encountered your book. Now,
Yeah. And apparently you've gotten well together, which is fabulous.
well,
And by the way, Bob, there's nothing better you can say to an author than that you couldn't put it down. You had to keep turning the pages. Let me tell you another quick story. When I was writing my first book about all of this, I've written many books, but the first of these books about shamanism and dream work was called Conscious Dream. It came out originally in 1996. And I did what I would recommend anybody does in embarking on a project. I asked for dream guidance on the theme, and my theme was, how can I help bring these gifts of dreaming to lots of people in our society, because people need this. So my theme was, as I lay down to bed, I wrote it down, how can I help more people understand what dreaming is all about? And I dreamed that I'm under a sort of three-ring circus tent kind of situation, and there's, strange acrobatics going on. There's a guy who's jumping up to the top of the tent. He's coming down again. He's wearing a loud suit like a sort of racetrack tout, and now he's sitting in the bleachers, and he's smoking a cheap stogie, and he's smooching with a blonde in the front row. And I know in the dream, this is my guide, and I'm thinking, this guy doesn't look like a very spiritual kind of guide. His name is Marty. He looks like a cheap racetrack tout or something. And Marty gives me a big wink, and he puffs on his stogie, and he smooches with the blonde in the bleachers, and he says to me in the dream, he says, it's about entertainment, kid. It's about entertainment. And I woke up laughing out loud. Dreams like that, you wake up laughing. And I thought, Marty, my dream guide, has a point. He may not seem like the most evolved character, but one of the things we must do if we're going to carry a story is we must make people want to hear it. We must make it entertaining, not in the sense of dumbing down the story, but in the sense of the story being compelling and exciting and making you want to turn the pages. You know that as a writer and as a presenter. We've got to make people want to keep turning the pages. That is one of the basic requirements.
Well, I'm going to put you under arrest for one thing here, though, and that is, some of the best parts that I was enjoying that I just didn't want to go to sleep on was nearing the end when you started talking about the multiverse and the possibilities of having one incarnation of yourself, being able to communicate with others.
Yes.
Whoa. I mean, this is really important, and I really should not be moving in that direction of mentioning it now. It's just that's the kind of thrill. When I said it's an adventure, I thought that by the time I got to one of the last chapters that okay, you were just going to round it up, but you kept going with new stuff.
Yeah.
And, this book probably could have been 500 pages.
Yeah, well, the new book that I'm working on now is very much about that. On the one hand, it's very much an autobiographical story, not a conventional autobiography at all, but an autobiography of my adventures in the worlds in the multidimensional universe. And it's very much about that, about how the multiverse operates and how we can, as we grow in consciousness, have an engagement and encounter with selves and other realities, understanding that it's all happening now, and learning, from the gifts and the challenges of those different selves and those different spaces. I mean, this for me is the absolute center of what I want to know and what I want to teach and what I want to learn more about. My last weekend workshop in this country, I teach all over the planet, as you probably know. I've just come back from Prague, and before that, Utrecht in the Netherlands, before that, Germany. But my last weekend workshop in the United States was entitled, Bob, Time Travel and Reality Creation. And we did a 2-day depth experiential workshop on that theme. And for those 2 days, I can assure you we were all right there. We all felt we were right there at the center of the multiverse. I mean, waking up to the fact that we can operate right now in contact and communion with those selves in different times, parallel universes in past and future, and can all gain from that encounter. So I know you're interested in these matters. This is absolutely the center of my own adventure in the universe right now.
Well, it's marvelous work. It really is, and it's so helpful to so many people. Now, you say that dreams not only show us what the soul wants, they also show us where it's gone.
Yes.
Please elaborate and provide an example of this.
Can I tell you a story about this?
I love stories. I like stories more than
I think
anything.
Stories are the shortest route between the human and the truth, and the way that I like to teach and the way that I like to respond to things. So here's a story from one of my workshops. I have a woman in the workshop whose name is Eva, the universal feminine name, Eva. And she's a bit ticked off. It's a residential workshop. It's running 3 days. It's in southern France. And she's done all sorts of spiritual practice. She's done meditation. She's done yoga. She's done shamanic journeying. She knows a lot. But she has no relationship with the night dreams. And on the second morning of the workshop, she says, Robert, I feel frustrated because, there are all these people here talking at the breakfast table about their dreams from the night, and I don't have any. I look at her and I say, Eva, tell me the last dream you remember from your life. And she says, well, I was 9 years old. It was 30 years ago, so obviously she's 39 years old now, and she says, well, in the dream, there's a hand offering me chocolate, and she says, I love chocolate, but I don't want to take it because I've been told not to take candy from strangers, etc., and the hand is coming from behind a curtain. I don't know who's there, and I'm scared, and I wake up screaming. And Mom and Dad come, and they say, go back to sleep, it's only a dream. They do what, well-meaning but ignorant adults do all the time to kids who think their dreams are real and the kids are right. And so a good Catholic girl, she prays to Jesus and Mary and all the saints, no more dreams, please. And her prayers, I guess, are answered because for 30 years she has not remembered a dream. So I tell her, okay, Eva, how would you like to go back inside this dream, open the curtain, and see what's going on and see what flows from that? And this is not completely exotic to her. She's done some shamanic journeying. She understands it's possible to travel in consciousness in certain ways. We're using drumming, shamanic drumming in the workshop. So she's got a bit of a clue about what I'm talking about. But she is scared. She doesn't want to go back into this place of the childhood fear. And I say, Eva, I'll come with you if you want me to. You can pick other people to come with you as your friends and trackers. We'll make a journey with the drumming. You can go back into the dream, open the curtain, and see what is waiting for you. Okay, she's not keen, but she's willing to do it. So in an hour or so in the workshop, I'm drumming. I'm playing the drum in the shaman's way, fairly simple, fairly steady, heartbeat drumming, and she is traveling in consciousness. She's traveling back inside the dream. She's going back to the curtain that conceals the person who was offering her the chocolate 30 years before in her childhood dream. She opens the curtain. And behind the curtain, she sees an angelic being of great radiance and beauty, and she's stunned. The features resolve into a recognizable face. They become the face of her father's best friend, a man she regards as a second father and loved profoundly, a man who owned a toy shop, or let her play in the toy shop after hours, nothing bad there, all good, would tell her stories. And she says to this man she remembers from childhood in her wide-awake conscious dream as an adult, she says, why did you not show yourself? Why did you frighten me? And her father's friend says, oh, my dear, you've forgotten I was killed in that terrible car crash. My face was mutilated. I didn't want to frighten you. I wanted to do something sweet because I loved you. There are tears. There's joy. Something is being resolved. This is not the end of the story. She comes back from this wide-awake conscious dream journey crying and happy, and I say, I think your relationship with your dreams will be different now. Now, Bob, what followed is the residential workshop is the next morning at the breakfast table, she is the first one there. She can't wait to tell us all the dreams she has remembered from the night before. The woman who has not remembered a single dream in 30 years, she is now telling us one by one 8 dreams she remembers from the one night. Oh. She says, the dreams are going through my mind all night long like a high-speed train. Vroom, vroom, vroom. She's telling us the dreams. And as she tells the dreams, we feel and know that parts of herself, parts of her vital self, have come back because she got into contact with them. And I say to her, this is wonderful. I feel you're more full of yourself, with your soul than before. And I said, I don't sound like a psychic reader, but I want to make a prediction. I bet your dad's going to be in touch with you. She says, oh, Dad, right, yeah, he's this up stiff character, never showed any affection, never talked to me. Yeah, Dad, forget him. At noon that day, her father called her for the first time ever in her memory, calls her on the phone, and says, I want to talk about a dream with you. Now, in this story, we've heard a number of things. We've heard about how a dream from childhood, the last dream someone remembered, who's been going through a dream drought for 30 years, that dream, when re-entered, when she learned to go back inside the dream, was a way of resolving a mystery and going over a terror and recovering part of herself which came through fully in the follow-up to the dream and then became the secret and the heart of family healing. This is one of the things that I teach people with help, with support, with friends. And you need that. You need a support network. You can learn to use memories and dreams as doorways to go to the places where parts of yourself can be found that have been missing, maybe for most of a lifetime. So that's an example of the techniques that are offered in Dreaming the Soul Back Home. And as I say, this is not deeply esoteric stuff. If it's about secrets, it's about open secrets in the sense that we can access these secrets. We find the courage and the need to work with them. They're waiting for us to explore.
And also, you write so well from the standpoint of every word seems to be the right word.
Well, that's very charming of you. I do like good writing. I'm very impatient about bad writing. I do like good writing. I've written in various genres. My first collection of poetry is about to come out. It's coming out next month. It's called Here Everything is Dreaming. So I do like the play of words. And I'd say in relation to shamanism and healing, Bob, that real shamans, the shamans that interest me, are poets of consciousness in the sense that they change things by telling a better story about them and producing what the Inuit, what the Eskimos, the Inuit, call fresh words. The Inuit say we need fresh words to entertain the spirits, because the spirits get very bored with us and withdraw their energy, and we're just doing the same old stuff. So we need fresh words. So I love the play of words. I love to write as well as I can, and you'll see that in future books as well.
No, it just makes it, well, it's much easier to remember when you write that way for us. I mean, because it's that if you can't remember what you learn all the time, you get yourself in trouble. Well,
I think that is basic truth, and thank you so much for saying it so clearly. I think one of the things that I like to say to people is your personal truth. What is your personal truth? Is what you remember and what you act upon. If you can't remember it, it's not your truth. Something you've got to look up. It's not your working truth, is it? I mean, it's not available to you on a daily basis. And it's also something that you are prepared to act upon because it's important to you. What we remember, I think, is easier to remember and to act upon if it is carried by story, and by words that stick in the mind rather than by, more vague concepts or more sterile, containers that we can't really work with on a daily basis.
Now, you still live up in upstate New York, right?
I do, although my youngest daughter, when she's very small, said, Daddy lives in a suitcase because I spend 50% of my time on the road. Yes. But my relationship with upstate New York is very important because I moved up here 25 years ago now to live on a farm initially. I bought a place that had been, half of the land had been used as a dairy farm and half the land was woodland. I wanted to get away from cities. I wanted to establish roots in the country that I was living in. I grew up in Australia. I lived in Europe, and I'd come here. And it was on that land, Bob, that 25 years ago I started dreaming in a language I did not understand, which turned out to be an archaic form of the Mohawk Indian language. And following those dreams, and eventually they required me to learn the Mohawk language, which isn't straightforward for someone who's grown up speaking a European language. That actually led me to change my life and follow the path that I'm now on. So I have this relationship with upstate New York. I now live in a small Rust Belt city upstate, but I stayed in the same part of the world. That was a big turning point in my life, living at the edge of traditional Mohawk Indian land. Now I live on what was Mohawk Indian land once upon a time. I didn't become a Mohawk Indian. I'm not a Mohawk Indian, but I learned their language and I learned something of the tradition of that people, and that helped to change my life.
The Hudson Valley has to be one of the most sacred areas in this country. So much has come out of it in a positive way, and I wish we had time more to talk about that. And my producer's saying we have to take a break here, and I better pay attention. She's going to beat me up because she's bigger than I am. Our guest is Robert Moss, Dreaming the Soul Back Home, Shamanic Dreaming for Healing and Becoming Whole. New World Library, mossdreams.com.
Hi, this is Stephen Schwartz, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight talking with Bob Hieronimus on one of the most exciting radio programs that I know in the country. 21st Century Radio is really a place where you will get good information from things that matter in your life and that will give you an insight into who you are and why you're here.
Hey, friends, look, it's spring's almost here. Almost. And summer's almost here. You need some good books to take out with you. This book, you will have the best time in your life. And the only problem you're going to have with it is maybe you better get 2 or 3, because as soon as you take it home, someone's going to borrow it, and it may be the last time you see it. and you don't want that to happen to you. So all you got to do is buy 2 or 3. Is that okay, Robert? Can they do that?
I think that's terrific.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Robert Moss happens to be one of those teachers that I think really knows his stuff and knows how to communicate. And must be embarrassing him now, so I better back off. I'm backing off on this.
I'm not embarrassed yet, Bob. You can keep on like this for the rest of the show.
Well, yeah. Have you ever heard of Gene Shepherd?
Yes.
Well, he used to be one of my favorite, because he tells stories. I just love to hear stories. Okay, now I got to get serious here. What does it mean when we dream of animals?
Well, the animal might be an aspect of you, and the condition of the animal might be a condition, might be quite revealing. It might be a mirror to how you are following your natural energy or failing to follow your natural energy. I'm thinking as you ask that about people who, for example, dream of a sleeping animal, or maybe a large animal, maybe a powerful animal. Many women, for example, have told me dreams of a sleeping lioness, sometimes in their room, sometimes on their porch. And I think when I hear that, well, maybe the lioness aspect of yourself could be awakened. Maybe there is a power, a strength, a beauty in you which has been dormant, which could be awakened. People dream of animals in many ways. Sometimes they're running away from wild animals in their dreams. I mean, I've worked with many people who've confronted bears in their dreams, bears that have sometimes seemed to be large and savage, and have sometimes been trying to shut the door against the bear, or even have the cops or the army come and take the bear away, or trying to kill the bear. And that's always saddened me because, in North America, where we are talking, the bear is traditionally the great medicine animal.
Yeah.
So if you are hiding from the bear or trying to get the bear locked up, or worse still, trying to kill the bear, maybe you are at odds with your own medicine, with your own power of self-healing. Maybe you are, not receiving, not open to power of healing that the bear would represent. From a shamanic point of view, we're not fully alive unless we have a conscious working relationship with our animal spirits. I take this quite seriously.
Yes, you do.
Which means quite playfully. I mean, I want to see us waking up to the fact that we have, friends, companions, similar entities in the natural world, in the world of the animals, and that when we wake up to what they are, we can learn about the natural pathway of our energies and how we need to live and how we need to behave. So sometimes one of the things that you learn from the animals that turn up in your dreams is you learn about a part of yourself which is more primal, more natural, more instinctual, and knows what it's doing in terms of how to use your body, how to feed your body, how to move your body, knows more about that than you do in your own human mind. I had a huge education about this when I was first living in upstate New York. I knew the bear from European traditions, but I grew up in Australia where there are no native bears. There are koalas. They're cute, but they're not bears. When I was first living in upstate New York, I dreamed recurringly that there was a giant bear coming into my space, not threatening me, but so much bigger than me that I was scared of it. And I finally did what I would recommend to anybody under these circumstances to do. I put myself back in the dream. I'm just sitting in an easy chair in the living room. I'm not doing anything particularly unusual. My intention is simply to go back into the dream where the giant bear appeared and find out what is going on. And bang, I am right back inside the dream. And there is the bear. And I can smell the bear. The bear is rank and feral and huge. I can see the claws. Bears don't retract their claws, so that's not unusual. But the bear is scary, and it takes an active will to step up to the bear, and I do that in my conscious dream. And the bear wraps his great arms around me. I think I'm a goner. He's going to crush my ribs. I'm gone. He doesn't. It's a gentle bear hug, and at that moment we are the same size, and then I notice something very strange. And the bear wants me to see it. There is something like an umbilical cord that runs from my heart to the heart of the bear, pumping vital energy back and forth. And I see that I am somehow, inexplicably, connected to the bear at the heart. And at the end of this wide-awake vision, I know this. I know that the bear wants me to understand that if I call on the bear as a healer and protector, he or she will always be available. And since then, Bob, I've called on the bear. When I open workshops, we sing a song for the bear, a traditional indigenous song to call in the bear. So I'd say this: if you're dreaming of animals, there might be mirrors of yourself, mirrors of parts of yourself that are like those animals and need certain treatment, need certain feeding, need certain handling. But it might also be that a larger power in your life is hunting you, looking for you, coming upon you as the bear stalked me in my dreams, coming into my house until I woke up to the fact that there was a potential relationship with a healing spirit, an energy for healing that I had not recognized until that moment. I believe this. I think the greater powers of life, whether they come as bears or angels or something else, are seeking us, and dreams are one of the ways that they look to find us.
Well, what led you to follow the path of a shamanic dream teacher for which, as you say, quote, there is no career track in our culture, end quote?
Well, indeed. I mean, it might have happened in childhood. I mean, the sources of it lie in my childhood. I died and came back, as Australian doctors called it, in childhood. We didn't call it the near-death experience back in those days in Australia. At 9, the experience I remember most vividly, I under emergency appendectomy in a Melbourne hospital, I left my body and I seemed to lead a whole lifetime somewhere else before I came back, and I remembered the first person I could find who could give me any kind of confirmation or validation of an experience like this was an Aboriginal kid from the traditional culture of the indigenous people of Australia who said, matter of fact, oh yeah, we get sick, we go somewhere else. If we get well, we come back. And so I had those experiences, which made me familiar with the idea that we live in a multiverse. We live in a world of many different dimensions, some concealed to ordinary understanding. So I grew up with that kind of knowledge, but I had to stay rather quiet about it, because I grew up in a conservative time in Australia in a military family where you didn't really talk about these things. What happened to me 25 years ago in upstate New York was that deeper world got hold of me and made me pay attention to the extent that I could no longer, stay quiet about it. It started really when I started dreaming of people who lived in the 18th century. I know this is an area that you know something about. I dreamed of an Anglo-Irishman who lived on the New York frontier. His name was Sir William Johnson. He was King's Superintendent of Indians. He was an Anglo-Irishman who came here to make some money and fell in love with the Indians and shared their lives. He was a man of wealth and power, but he shared the lives of the Mohawk Indians in upstate New York before the Revolution. I dreamed of his life, and I dreamed of the life of Indians that he knew, and I dreamed particularly of the mother of the Wolf Clan of the Mohawk people, a shaman and a Rondiwana, a woman of power of her culture, who wanted to teach me things that Johnson understood to some extent but didn't honor fully. And I was drawn through my dreams and visions and through synchronicity into a world of the early Haudenosaunee, the early Iroquois, among which dreams were considered to be highly important. Dreams were considered to be keys to soul healing and keys to survival. You saw the future in dreams, and that could save your community, not just yourself. You learned in dreams where the soul had gone and how it could be brought home. You learned in dreams what the soul wants, and you learned how to help people honor the wishes of the soul and lead deeper lives. I learned this from an ancient tradition, and I put it together with what all of our ancestors knew. I mean, I'm a Scots Celt by ancestry. Pretty soon my fierce Scottish ancestors were walking through my dreams saying, look here, laddie, we know a thing or two also. I've been a best-selling thriller writer just before this. I'm making lots of money. People wanted my autograph, people reading my books on planes and so on, but I got bored with that. My soul was clutching at me to do something else, clawing at me to do something else. And there on that land where I would watch the family of red foxes at the corner of the cornfield and watch the white-tailed deer and watch the blue heron who stayed through a whole winter once, there, dreaming in the ancient language of an indigenous people of that part of the world, I realized, my goodness, there is something deeper than what I've been living for and living with. It's about soul. It's about going to the depth of life. It's about living in different times and different dimensions at once. And finally, after having gone through what Jung called a confrontation of the unconscious for a few years, I decided I had to learn how to bring this to other people in ways that they could learn from, which were easy but deep for them to receive. So I took my own experiences and I developed a practice in a way that for which, as you said, there is no model in our society. But it came out of this depth encounter with forces and personalities of a larger reality, and then finding my way back, not overnight. It took years of trial and error, and Stan Krippner, who you quoted, was part of this story, you know. If you like,
yes.
I'll tell you about that.
We need to take our final break of this hour, and we'll return with Robert Moss, Dreaming the Soul Back Home, Shamanic Dreaming for Healing and Becoming Whole, New World Library, mossdreams.com. Oh, boy. Friends, this is 21st Century Radio. Welcome back. I'm the alleged Dr. Bob Hieronimus, and my producer is Laura Kortner. And our engineer is Kristen Hegerick. You are listening to a new piece from local artist Bob Darlington, who will be joining us later this hour to talk about his music. All the music this hour is by Bob Darlington, both solo and his band Translator. This one is called Heaven. And you notice he talked about meeting an angel and taking it to his dreams. And when he heard that we were having Robert Moss on, first thing he said is, I got to have that book. Did you hear that, Robert?
That's great.
It's true. That's what he said.
I like his music, too.
Well, it's multi-leveled. It really is. And as, you know, some of the groups that I worked with a long time ago could do that, like Hendrix and sometimes the Marleys and others, but most of them couldn't get the quality of the sound right. Well, hey, I shouldn't be talking about this. We're
Why not? That's great.
Well, because I got some important questions here. Now, you say that dreaming is not fundamentally about what happens in sleep. It's about waking up. Could you please explain that?
Well, you know, in waking life, we're often like sleepwalkers. We're trying to fit in with the schedule, fit in with people's expectations. We let other people tell us who we are and what we can do. And we're sometimes lost to the larger story of life. We're so caught up with the clutter and the requirements that we forget what it's all about. Many of us are sort of struggling with any sense of meaning in life. And in dreaming, we wake up. Now, we might wake up in sleep. We might have a dream during sleep that we remember, which shakes us awake. It shows us something about ourselves. One of the functions of our sleep dreams is to hold up a mirror to our waking actions and attitudes so we can see ourselves more clearly. That's one way of waking up, and that's how sleep dreams can wake us up. But you know what? We dream in other modes of consciousness, in other states of the day. We dream in liminal states, borderline states, in a state of hypnagogia during the night. You're not awake, you're not asleep, you're drifting. Actually, it's in those drifting in between states a lot of revelations come, particularly when you've got your basic rest and you're sort of lazing or languoring and you have things come to you as the morning approaches. That's ancient cultures have recognized that state of beginning to leave sleep but not being fully awake as a state of revelation, a state of visitation, a state of getting messages. And then we can wake up in a dreamlike way during our regular lives. When you start paying attention to coincidence or synchronicity, to signs and messages in the world around you, when you let the world around you speak like a set of dream symbols, that's a way of coming awake. And I would call that state of consciousness, of recognizing the dreamlike symbols in the world around you, as a set of messages and a pattern that you want to pay attention to. I describe that as a kind of dreaming. And then, of course, we can dream without going to sleep. We can dream consciously. We can do this in various ways. I mean, daydreaming is an easy, everyday example of this. It may or may not come to anything because it may just drift away. But you can dream in a more focused way. You can learn, and I teach people to do this, to embark on wide-awake, conscious, shamanic dream journeys. You know, we use the drumming in the workshops. You use the drumming and you set an itinerary. You go to a certain place, you have adventures, and you come back wide awake and conscious. You can do that in relation to your night dreams and memories. Suppose you remember something from the night. It might be a fragment to begin with. You can learn to go back inside that personal image, whether it's a dream or a life memory, shift consciousness, travel inside it, and do some good. I told a story earlier about a woman called Eva who went back to a childhood dream and resolved the mystery and the terror of that dream, and in the process got her dreams and part of her soul back. So, you know, when I think about this across time, and you do this too, Bob, when I go back to Egypt, for example, and some people listening to us feel quite Egyptian, when I go back to Egypt, I remember that in the language of ancient Egypt, the word for dream literally means awakening. That's what it means. We transliterate the word as reswet. We write it as RWST. The Egyptian term for dream literally means an awakening and is written with the symbol of a wide open eye at the end of the hieroglyphs. So there you are from a people who did a great deal of dreaming. Dreaming was terribly important to Egyptian practice of everything. The idea is that to dream is to awaken. So that's my personal mantra about dreaming. We dream in order to wake up. Dreaming is about waking up.
Well, I have a very, very dear friend that has dreams of not being able to find her car time and time again. What might be the source of something
Well,
like
isn't
that?
that interesting? I mean, if it's again and again, it's unlikely to be a literal dream. It could be a dream about actually parking your car somewhere where you can't find it, your car being stolen. My first reflex in relation to dreams is to ask, could this happen in ordinary reality? Is there an advisory? If it's a recurring dream, I'm going to go to a more symbolic level of explanation. I'm going to think about all the things that your car could represent. It could represent your body. It could represent an aspect of your soul. It could represent a relationship. It could represent something fundamental to your life. I just went Egyptian on you for a moment, and in the English language I hear a sort of homonym, a word play between the word ka, C-A-R, and the Egyptian word ka, K-A,
yes,
which is an aspect of the soul, one of the many aspects of soulful soul the Egyptians recognized. When I think about a recurring dream of not being able to find your car, I think about soul. I think about maybe the dreamer, if it's my dream, is having difficulty keeping it together in terms of keeping in contact with all the aspects of the self that he or she wants around. So I feel a little bit of tristesse, a little bit of slight sadness in relation to such a dream, because it's saying to me that there is something vital to me that I'm not sufficiently in contact with. I don't know where it is, and that might be as important as an aspect of my fundamental identity, myself, my soul, that I want to be in touch with. So that's where my mind goes with that simple image as you reported it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. What do you think the relevance of dreams is in modern society?
I think it's essential. I think that if we are not in touch with our dreams, we're missing out on the movies, but we're missing out on a lot of entertainment. We're missing out on a lot more. I mean, I know this about dreams. So let me put this in a broader view for a moment. I know this about why most human cultures and most of our odyssey on the planet have valued dreams. They valued them for three reasons beyond all else, and these are so relevant to our contemporary lives. They have understood, number one, that dreams show us the future. They show us the future. They show us things that will happen, and they show us things that may or may not happen, depending on whether we can read the dream information accurately and whether we decide to take appropriate action. I couldn't be talking to you right now, Bob, to my certain knowledge, had I not avoided death on the road 3 times by using dream information, dream rehearsals for possibly fatal road accidents to avoid those road accidents. I've written a great deal about this in some of my other books on dreaming, how dreams show us the future and how they enable us to make better choices and shape the future for the better. So that's number one. That's relevant to everybody. I know this, number 2. Dreams put us in touch with a source that is wiser and deeper than the ordinary mind. Call it God, goddess, call it the greater self, call it the ancestors, call it nature, call it all the above. I mean, dreams put us in touch with sources that go beyond our ordinary understanding. We are all psychic in dreams. We all have access to levels of reality beyond the ordinary in dreams. And most cultures, as I say, have recognized that. Dreams are a way of getting in touch with the God, goddess you could talk to. And number 3, dreams are medicine. You know, one of the things that goes on in dreams is that mind or consciousness travels through the body and it reports back, if we're listening, on what is going on inside the body, what the body needs to get well or to stay well. That's important. Dreams diagnose things that can happen in the body before doctors can find symptoms. That is terribly important. And I have so many practical examples of this. And beyond that, when we get sick, we need images to help us get well. I mean, this is being recognized more and more in medical science, that the right images, the right thoughts can heal the body. Where do you get the right images? We might get them from many sources, but your dreams are a factory of images that are your own, they're authentic, they're personal, they can help you to get well. So those are 3 reasons, very simple reasons, recognized by most human societies until recently, why dreams are important and all intensely of practical and urgent concern to us today.
Well, how do we handle, say, heavy, scary dreams, and what can we learn from those dreams?
Oh, one of my personal mantras, this is an original statement about dreaming, is this: dreams are not on our case, they're on our side. Okay, so you're having a scary, terrible dream, you run away from it, you slam the door, you say, thank God it's only a dream, don't want to think about that. That is a dumb strategy. the dreams that come to us are dreams we need to work with. We may not like them, but you know what? Think of it this way. Your dream producers, who might be your own greatest self, are trying to alert you to things you need to do something about. So if you're frightened about something in your dreams, instead of running away, learn to stay your ground, look at it, and determine what needs to be done. There's something threatening you in your dream. You can learn this. You can learn to stay with the dream or go back inside the dream, confront the danger, confront the terror, and find out what it is. That can be incredibly revealing and incredibly healing. Maybe what's scaring you is a preview of a future event you can avoid if you work with the dream. I repeat, I would not be talking to you right now had I not had 3 scary dreams which I thought I had died in a car crash. I got the information from the dreams, and I avoided what I believe would have been fatal road accidents on those 3 separate occasions. So, you know, once you rise above the understanding rise above the belief, the superstition that dreams are out to get you and are just, you know, random things that are bothering you in the night, to the idea that dreams may be messages from a wiser self, alerts from a wiser self that can save your life, save your sanity, put you in touch with other parts of yourself and give you keys to healing, then you're on the road to doing something really interesting. I could tell you many stories about terrifically frightening dreams people had, which became dreams of healing when they learned to confront the terror in the dream and resolve the issue. I told you my own dream of the giant bear, which was frightening to me, until I went back inside the dream and found the bear represented a power of self-healing and healing for others that I could claim once I found the courage and the will to brave up and take what the dream was offering me.
Would you mind telling us another story?
Another story?
Yeah, about if you don't mind. I love hearing these things.
Okay, well, this will take a couple of minutes. Is that all right? Of course.
We got a couple of minutes.
All right, here's a story of a terrifying dream. So a woman artist, a well-known one, but I won't name her, approaches me because she is frightened by a recurring dream in which a spider is frightening her. And in the most recent version of the dream, the spider has grown until it's as big as her foot. It's jumping all over her art studio. She runs away, and she doesn't, in waking life, dare to go back into her own art studio because she's so frightened by the dream. I say to her, great dream. She's not enthusiastic. I say, if it were my dream, I would go back inside it, confront the spider, and see what needs to be done. She's not enthusiastic. In her mind, you see, the spider represents the disease of cancer. She's had cancer. She's been in remission. She's going in for more tests. She is terrified. The spider represents for her the cancer that might be returning. She agrees with my encouragement to go back inside the dream. I agree to be her friend and supporter, but I'm not going to do any work. I'm just going to be with her and help her, and I'm holding her hand. And she's making the attempt in her mind to step back into the place where she met the spider and was frightened by it the last time. We're sitting outside the closed doors of her art studio. She steps back inside in her imagination. There is the spider. The spider is in front of her. It's growing enormous. It's growing larger than she is. It's anatomically correct. It's not a good thing to look at, but it's not my spider, so I, accompanying her, am not frightened. She is terrified. She's facing the spider. It's gigantic. She doesn't want to be there, but she, stands her ground for what seems like a terribly long time. The spider shapeshifts and becomes a radiant, beautiful young woman, maybe a form of spider woman, a native form of the goddess. And the young woman says to the dreamer inside her wide-awake dream, the young woman says, spider woman says, you found your courage. I'm going to give you the power to shape-shift the energy web of your body so you don't have to get the disease again. And I'm going to give you the ability to shape-shift the web of your life so you will now enter the most creative phase of your life. Both promises were fulfilled, Bob. When the dreamer went back to the doctors for the tests, she was cancer-free. And in the 15 years since this episode, she's been engaged in the most creative season of her life, using new media and finding new audiences. That's an example of what can happen when, instead of running away from the terrors in our dreams, we face them, go back and confront them, and find our way to healing and resolution.
By just doing just saying what you just said, so many of our listeners who have had those kind of problems may now probably have gained a little bit more courage, Robert. Because
it does take courage, and I know that it's difficult,
yeah.
But we are required to brave up in order to claim our power and our healing. This is a rule of life. The German poet Rilke said, every angel is terrifying. You can go to a Hallmark store, you see cute pictures of angels, but when the real angel of your life first appears to you, particularly if you're in an extreme situation, you're going to be scared. You're going to have to brave up. This is one of the conditions of life. You know that. You've survived a lot, and all of us have survived a lot in this life, and we are being encouraged in our dreams and in what life throws at us to find the courage and the will and thereby the way to do better.
Well, there's one particular area of your book I've gone over a couple of times because I'm very fond of ravens.
Yes.
And you have one little section, it's one for the birds, and the language of the birds and the bird people and everything. What can you share with us about birds? Because, I just have the best time with them.
Yes. Well, one of the gifts of the birds is vision, and the ability to see things from an aerial perspective, from a higher perspective. So if you're going to work shamanically with birds, and this is more everyday than that might sound. If you're going to work with the birds, if you feel close to the birds, if you can imagine yourself flying like a bird or seeing like a bird, let's put it that way, you've already got a couple of assets. The first is that you'll have the gift of vision because birds typically have keen sight. And you'll have the gift of being able to see things from different angles and from an aerial perspective that might be lacking to you down here on the ground. I mean, the ability to rise above whatever life is throwing at you, whatever complications you're in, and look at things from a different angle, a different perspective, that's a great gift in life. And a connection with the birds will give that to you. I work shamanically with the raven and with other birds, but I write a certain amount about the raven in that book. There's actually a poem about the raven in my new collection that's coming out next month. And I love the raven. The raven is a great tracker, and of course, unknown to most people, ravens live in pairs, not singly. The solitary raven is a rarity in nature. Ravens don't like to live alone. They like to live in pairs, in couples. Something to know about them. And it's interesting that in so many mythologies, in so much folklore, the raven is a bird of vision, an ally to deities and powers that we regard as connected with light, even though the raven gets his bad rep. Apollo, god of light and music, his bird is the raven in ancient Greece. Odin, the shaman god of the far north, travels with two ravens called Thought and Memory, and when he needs to see something at a distance, they fly around and they bring messages back to him. In my workshops, I encourage people to think that they can see with the help of the birds, especially the ravens, and they do really well in journeys in which they track the possible future and bring information for each other.
Robert, we are just about out of time, but I wanted to ask you this question concerning if our listeners contacted you or went up to mossdreams.com, can they find out, because I'm not allowed to mention where they could hear you on the radio. Yeah. Can they do that?
Yes. I mean, my website has my basic coordinates. It's got my radio show. I teach workshops all over the planet. You can find my events calendar. You can also find me on my author page on Facebook, Robert Mouse Dreams. You can just like that, and then you're connected with me. That way you'll get highlights of what I'm doing.
Well, thank you. Robert, this has been terrific. It's been more than that. This has really been kind of like a dream come true. It really has.
You're a dream host, Bob. I've enjoyed every minute. Thank you so much.
Well, I enjoyed it more than you, so don't try to tell me what to do here. Or something like that.
We don't have to compete on that front.
Well, I look forward to your joining us again. When you got a new book out, let us know, and we'll go get them. Okay?
It would be my pleasure.
It's our pleasure, sir.
May your best dreams come true, Bob.
Thank you, and the same to you. That was Robert Moss, Dreaming the Soul Back Home, Shamanic Dreaming for Healing and Becoming Whole, New World Library, mossdreams.com. You couldn't get a better book on dreams or talk with a better teacher on this particular topic. He's just an extraordinary soul. 21st Century Radio is produced by Hieronimus and Company. Our executive producer and research assistant is Laura Kortner. Our engineer is Anita Brockington, and I'm Dr. Bob Hieronimus.